Colorado's transparency at issue with how it's paying for Deion Sanders and his players. The sun rose over Boulder, Colorado, on the first day of the new fiscal year, July 1st, 2025, with more tension than celebration. On paper, the University of Colorado Boulder's athletics department was about to embark on its most ambitious financial journey yet. Behind closed doors, however, murmurs of uncertainty and concern were beginning to echo from the state's capital all the way to the university's boardrooms. The numbers, at first glance, were staggering. A new $10 million per year contract for football coach Deion Sanders, plus an additional $20.5 million annually in new benefits for players. These were not small steps for a university still adjusting to the national spotlight brought on by Sanders' arrival in 2022. They were leaps, the kind of bold, risky jumps that can either redefine an institution or plunge it into financial disarray. But as the fiscal year rolled on, one question began to haunt the campus community and the state's government alike. Where exactly was the money coming from? When reporters from USA Today Sports began digging into CU Boulder's finances in May 2025, the expectation was clear. A public university with such massive new commitments should have detailed records, projected revenues, expenditure breakdowns, and a plan outlining how these unprecedented costs would be managed. What they received, however, was almost nothing. The university responded to multiple public records requests under the Colorado Public Records Act, CORA, by saying that no records existed responsive to those requests. It was an answer that left even seasoned government officials shaking their heads. By September, after months of back and forth, CU Boulder produced a single document, one that estimated a $24 million increase in expenses for fiscal year 2026. But the most critical section of that document, the revenue page, was completely blank. A lone phrase, typed neatly in the middle of the page, carried an almost mocking simplicity: TBD, to be determined. For a university managing an athletic budget rumored to exceed $100 million, the lack of written financial projections was nothing short of stunning. At this point, who's running a $100 million budget without it written down? Asked Jack Kroll, a former member of the University of Colorado Board of Regents. I think that's laughable, and if it is true, it's something we all should raise an eyebrow at. Kroll wasn't just a casual critic. He had been one of the few regents to vote against Sanders' original contract back in 2022, when the coach's first-year salary of $5.5 million was considered steep by Colorado standards. Now, 3 years later, Sanders' paycheck had nearly doubled, and the athletics department's financial obligations were ballooning under the weight of new nil-era expenses. The transformation of college sports under name, image, and likeness, nil rules, has reshaped how universities compete for talent. Colorado, once considered a middle-tier football destination, suddenly found itself in the national spotlight after Sanders' arrival and his ability to recruit elite athletes such as Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. But success comes at a price, and under the new House versus NCAA legal settlement, that price has become astronomical. The agreement requires universities like CU Boulder to pay up to $20.5 million annually in direct benefits to athletes. This includes everything from nil opportunities to revenue-sharing arrangements designed to give student-athletes a tangible slice of the massive financial pie college sports generate. Earlier in 2025, Governor Jared Polis signed legislation supporting nil payments for college athletes in Colorado. The intent was noble, to modernize the system and give players their fair share. But buried in the bill was a controversial clause. Nil contracts between athletes and universities would be kept private, shielded from public disclosure. In his signing statement, Polis admitted his discomfort. These exceptions move transparency in the wrong direction, he warned. Any proposals that further prevent or delay public access to information will be carefully reviewed. That warning now feels prophetic. As the summer wore on and CU Boulder's financial opacity persisted, the governor's office could no longer remain silent. When USA Today Sports reached out for comment, Polis office didn't mince words. The governor is concerned about transparency and would encourage the General Assembly to review the law and expand transparency, a spokesperson said. The statement struck a careful balance between political diplomacy and public accountability, but the subtext was unmistakable. The state's top executive was frustrated. How could one of Colorado's flagship universities, a publicly funded institution, not produce even the most basic financial documentation for such monumental expenses? To many observers, the issue wasn't just about numbers. It was about trust. A university's finances, especially when intertwined with public money and taxpayer expectations, represent a social contract. That contract demands openness. Yet, CU Boulder's response, claiming that no records existed, seemed to breach that trust in broad daylight. Behind the glowing headlines and sold-out football games, a quiet unease had taken root within the CU community. Former professors, alumni, and even some within the university system began voicing their discomfort with what they described as a culture of secrecy. Among them was Roger Pielka, an emeritus professor who had previously taught sports governance at CU. Pielka's assessment was cutting. It is, of course, completely implausible that they have not considered their budget for FY 25-26 in great detail, he said. The information provided is embarrassingly not transparent for a public university and gives the impression of trying to hide budget details. If the investment in football is so valuable to the university, then the campus should proudly share its fiscal realities. His words carried the weight of someone who had watched CU Boulder evolve and struggle for decades. To Pielka, the university's current trajectory felt less like progress and more like an experiment in financial brinksmanship. Few figures in modern college sports have transformed an institution as quickly as Deion Sanders. From the moment he stepped foot in Boulder, Sanders became the embodiment of change, flashy, fearless, and unapologetically ambitious. Attendance soared, merchandise flew off shelves, national TV ratings for Colorado games skyrocketed. Donations surged as alumni and fans rallied behind Coach Prime. By late 2024, CU Boulder was being discussed not just as a football program but as a national brand. And that brand was expensive to maintain. When Sanders' new $10 million per year contract was approved, it symbolized more than just confidence in a coach. It was a bet on an entire identity. CU Boulder was no longer the quiet mountain university. It was a bold, audacious enterprise chasing football glory and media relevance. The gamble, in financial terms, hinged on what insiders dubbed the prime effect. The belief was that Sanders' charisma and recruiting prowess would generate enough attention, revenue, and sponsorships to offset his enormous salary. But as fiscal 2026 entered its second quarter, the numbers weren't matching the optimism. The university's refusal to disclose projections suggested an unsettling possibility that even with Sanders' success, CU Boulder's finances were teetering on uncertainty. Public universities occupy a unique place in American society. They are both educational institutions and civic entities accountable to taxpayers. Transparency isn't optional. It's foundational. Yet CU Boulder's opaque handling of its athletics budget has blurred that boundary. By stating that it had no responsive records to a Cora request, CU essentially declared that it had made multimillion-dollar financial commitments without written documentation. The mere suggestion of that reality, whether true or not, undermines public confidence. Critics argue that CU's evasiveness could set a dangerous precedent for other universities navigating the financial chaos of the nil era. If one institution can operate behind closed doors, what stops others from doing the same? Meanwhile, CU Boulder's official statement offered little comfort. CU Athletics is committed to transparency and will release our budget information as soon as it is available, in accordance with Colorado state law. It was the kind of message meant to reassure, but it landed with all the conviction of a placeholder. As soon as it is available could mean weeks, months, or never. The University of Colorado Boulder's transformation under Deion Sanders remains one of the most captivating stories in college athletics. Yet, as the lights burn brighter on the field, the shadows behind the scenes are growing longer. Sanders' charisma has undeniably elevated the university's profile. But at what cost? The intertwining of athletic ambition and administrative secrecy raises uncomfortable questions about priorities, not just for CU Boulder, but for the entire ecosystem of college sports. The Prime era, once celebrated as a renaissance, now sits at a crossroads. Can CU Boulder sustain its meteoric rise without sacrificing transparency and fiscal integrity? Or will the allure of football glory push the university toward an ethical cliff? For now, the only certainty is uncertainty. The blank TBD on CU's revenue sheet has become more than just a placeholder. It's a symbol of ambition unmoored from accountability, of a university caught between public duty and private dreams.